Just before we get into this review, I just want to say that all of this is my opinion. Like, none of this is fact. That's the greater part about opinions, is we can all have different views and standpoints. You might think this game is utter dog shit, or you might think it deserves Game of the Year. We can all have different opinions. Let's just move on with our day. Enjoy the review. Amnesia. A name synonymous with horror because, well, I kind of forget why. I'd say it's up there with Silent Hill and the classic Resident Evil games in terms of name recognition. I loved Amnesia: The Dark Descent. Watching people scream into their face cam in the YouTube of old was an absolute delight, and was one of the first games I bought for my Steam account when I first got my Pentium-powered laptop. Right next to Gmod. And having loved the first Amnesia game, I was absolutely delighted when their next game in the Amnesia franchise came out. A Machine for Pigs. We don't talk about that one. I'll be honest that I genuinely forgot that one even existed until I typed in Amnesia into my game library and saw there were 4 games in the Amnesia franchise. But then there was nothing for a while. Amnesia descended back into the dark. Get it? Dark descent. Nothing was heard from it since. Or at least up until the 6th of March 2020, a full 7 years after A Machine for Disappointment. I was so excited for this one as the trailers had that patented Frictional Games mystery to it, and upon its release to the public on the 20th of October 2020, I played it. I did enjoy my time with Rebirth, and even left a rare positive review for me on Steam. However, yet again, it didn't quite live up to the first. A fairly tall order to achieve, honestly, but a goal I think Frictional Games would totally be able to obtain. I mean, they did it with Penumbra. The second game there I felt was just as good as the first. So maybe with the next Amnesia release? One hop, skip and a jump later, on December 1st, 2022, Amnesia: The Bunker was announced. Well, I say announced. It felt like a stealth announcement I accidentally stumbled upon. But the teaser trailer that accompanied the intercepted super secret message that was the announcement of this new horror game had me hooked, and I instantly added that shit to my wish list. Fast forward to some point in May 2023, the demo for The Bunker dropped. It wasn't a timed demo, you were free to explore the early game at your leisure, and Frictional Games did the Chad move of not showing us the monster. Like, at all. The most you saw of it in the demo was its ghoulish fingers, and that's about it. The whole time in the demo, I was convinced that there was something stalking the halls, and it wasn't until right at the end of the demo I realized that it wasn't actually implemented. A fantastic PR move. But with the demo beaten, tone set, and tempered excitement in my tummy, the only thing left to do was wait for the full release. On the 6th of June it dropped. And for the low price of $20.99, it was mine. A bargain, it would seem, for this type of game. Now, I'm going to be very honest here. The game is short. I could tell that from the demo. I mean, it's a bunker, for God's sake. Not an elaborate castle with an underground reservoir, or a Victorian London street, or even a desert village that leads to the goddamn Upside Down. It was a bunker, with different sections and rooms to explore. So I wasn't expecting a 12-hour campaign. What I also wasn't expecting was for the demo to be half the game. Like, I beat the game in 3.5 hours game time, with a total Steam playtime being 5-ish hours. Now, like most Frictional Games, the lore of the story is often found through notes, some hidden and some just laying about like they pay rent. This game is no exception. However, what this game does differently is it gives you this set piece to play through that acts as a kind of tutorial to the game's mechanics. Like, fair enough, but in this set piece you also see how you get amnesia. Like, the whole thing leading up to it. The Dark Descent does something similar in that we know we're a person called Daniel, we've drunk a potion that will cause amnesia, and well, that's it. We don't know why we've done this to ourselves, but it just do be like that sometimes, I guess. Throughout the Dark Descent, we find notes from us and others that give you a glimpse of what has happened in the build-up to us drinking the forget-me-not flavor of Mountain Dew. Not sponsored. And it's up to us, the player, to connect the dots, or pages to get a full understanding of the story. Even later on in the game, we see things that cause us to remember what we did, and thus gives the player more of that sweet, sweet lore. Now you might be wondering to yourself, why am I bringing this up? Well, my dear viewer, there is no reason for the main protagonist to have amnesia. The whole reason the player gets it is as follows, and I will leave a timestamp on the screen if you don't want the first 2 minutes of the game spoiled. But essentially, you are in a nondescript battle in the First World War. You are a French soldier fighting the Germans, so probably the Battle of the Somme. You do some tutorial stuff in the trenches, and you eventually stumble upon your comrade that is in a very, very, very deep ditch. Deeper than any mortar or shell strike could make on its own. You discover after saving your brother-in-arm from an unnatural crater that their leg is badly injured, so you need to carry them to safety. However, you're very quickly spotted by the enemy and have to run away with your friend on your back. And then suddenly a grenade goes off and boom, the actual game starts. This serves literally no point to the narrative of the game. We've seen what has caused this soldier to lose his memory, yet we still get pages detailing the events like we didn't just physically witness them. Why include this if you're literally just going to tell us the same thing again in notes that we find? Personally, I would have just preferred to wake up straight in the bunker and then find the pages and read about it to unravel the mystery as to why we're actually there. Instead of actually witnessing it, it just takes away from the mystery element that these games are known for. And it feels like the only reason they did this was because the Amnesia brand is recognizable. But really, this should have been its own game. Or not even that. It feels like it should have been more of a Penumbra game. Like, playing through, that's how I felt 90% of the time. I mean, the other 10% was just anger. I just kept getting flashbacks of the first Penumbra game, having to explore new areas in this mineshaft to progress further into the story, with a ever-present threat that you need to find creative ways around in order to get you to your next goal, and eventually getting to your ultimate goal of freedom. Holy shit, this is just a reboot of the first Penumbra game, isn't it? Why was this not a Penumbra game? Okay, now that's over, I'm gonna get into the gameplay bits now. Just a heads up, I will be comparing this to the first Amnesia. So, some of you might find this unfair, but if the devs didn't want us to compare the two, it shouldn't have had the Amnesia name stapled to it. Now, this game is vastly different to its predecessor gameplay-wise. The most standout thing you will immediately notice is you have a gun. A full-on rootin' tootin' point and shooting gun. Huzzah! A form of defense, finally! Now, yes, this gun has bullets. Thus, this gun can be shot. There is indeed a monster. The monster can be shot. Now, I know what you're thinking.
If it bleeds, we can kill it.
No. The revolver in this game is more like the flamethrower in Alien Isolation. It'll scare off the monster for a short time before it comes back, rage and all. The gun also adds a slight problem-solving element to the game, as some locks can be shot, thus opening doors, etc. The gun is also very loud and will alert the monster to your location, so it kind of adds the nuance of I can shoot the lock off this door and progress, but it'll alert the monster. Do I then shoot the monster? Do I run and hide, or do I just crawl up into a ball and cry? On top of this, ammo is very scarce too, so you're constantly trying to balance your defense, exploration, and noise level in order to survive and progress. The other very noteworthy thing this game implements is a safe room. Yes, exactly like the ones in Resident Evil. You have a storage box and all, as well as the ability to lock the doors from the inside, which led to a very interesting interaction with the monster on my first playthrough. He looked at me so longingly. So, in the safe room you could save via the lantern, a nice callback to the first game in that the lantern was the main source of light the player used, or it was just a style choice of the devs. And there's also a typewriter directly below this save point, so that's definitely a callback to Resident Evil. You can quote me on that too. Like I said, you have access to a storage box, and you also have access to a generator that you need to fuel up, and you can turn on, and this provides light throughout the bunker. More on that mechanic later. Now, in this game, you have a finite amount of space in your inventory. Your main inventory can be expanded via pouch satchel thingies that you can find throughout the game. However, these are very rare and can be hard to find, so if you aren't exploring every inch of the bunker, you'll miss out on some upgrades. But in order to counteract this limited inventory space, you have a storage box back in the safe room. This storage box also has a very limited amount of space that cannot be expanded at all. I think it has about 16 slots total. Now, I played this game on normal difficulty and my inventory was as backed up as I am after eating a dry Sunday roast in the summer. I had to resort to dropping fuel cans directly next to the generator, as well as using up healing supplies after the smallest health loss just to make room for the necessary crap I needed to progress. So it just becomes a tedious process of remembering where things you might need are for a later date. It's just such a bizarre gameplay choice. Like, yeah, don't make the storage box infinite, but don't make it so I'm using the stuff on me just to make way for more stuff. I was never in dire need of anything, and it felt like I was playing on easy when it came to supplies. Also, the game has the illusion of expanded inventory, as those new inventory slots will be taken up by things that you then need to progress in the game. So you'll always have about 3 free slots. Not much to play around with. The last gameplay addition they've implemented to the game is crafting. Can't have a modern game without a shallow crafting system in place now, can you? I'm surprised they didn't also include a fucking slide mechanic as well. Yep, the crafting in this game is shallow as all hell. Guess how many things you can craft in the game? Go on, guess. I'll give you some time. Have a think about what you can craft in this game. Think of all the different things you might find in a World War I bunker and what combinations you could... It's 2. You can craft 2 fucking things. A bandage and a fucking torch. The flame kind, not the flashlight kind. And that's not even the worst part. These torches last about as long as the average YouTuber's your mama joke. There is no point in this crafting mechanic, as you can find bandages literally everywhere. They might as well have just made it so you can find the torches too, and done away with the whole system entirely. It's just something to pad out the experience, I guess. Oh, and you also have a Metro 2033 style torch that you need to charge up. That lasts all of 2 seconds. Just like me with your... Other than those changes, it's your typical physics-based spooky frictional games experience. Except it's not. When you think of Amnesia, what comes to mind? Scary monsters? Yeah, okay, I can see that. Darkness? Yeah, another good thing, yeah. Puzzles. The first game was littered with puzzles. The Amnesia brand is synonymous with puzzles. The closest this game gets to a single puzzle is... Do I blow this door off its hinges now or later? The game literally tells you where your objectives are through notes and a big fuck off red thumbnail circle on the map. This game involves no critical thinking or puzzle elements of any kind. Yeah, maybe not a Resident Evil match the shadow to unlock the door type puzzle, but give me something that'll challenge my brain. The notes you find literally tell you exactly where everything is, and it just feels completely railroaded. It just sucked. Now, let me talk you through some of the game. I'll also be talking about the monster in this bit too, so if you don't want spoilers, well, here's your warning. I've already spoken about the tutorial segment and the setup, so let me dive into where the game truly starts. You awaken in the medical wing of the bunker, with no memory of how you got there. Except we kind of do know how we got there, as it's not that big of a leap to assume we got rescued after the grenade went off, because if we didn't, there wouldn't be a game. Again, there was no reason to show us that intro bit, but I digress. We then explore around for a bit, trying to find a way forward, but blast! There's a lock on the door. We explore some more until we find a wounded soldier. He asks us to put him out of his misery using his revolver, but we need to find some ammo in the room across from him. And as we come back, ammo in hand, we see him violently get snatched away by some spooky looking arm.
Oh no! Anyway,
we pick up the revolver he dropped and make our way to the previously locked door from before. And blast the lock off. Finally, we see a light at the end of the dank, claustrophobic tunnel. We head down the hall, slam the door shut behind us, and lock the door. Calming music begins to play as we touch the lantern to save our progress. After exploring the safe area, we make our way into the main bunker and follow the exit signs. That is our goal, after all, to leave the dark halls of this bunker that seems to be inhabited by the average American rat. But, alas, the tunnel is blocked. We find a note telling us where to find some of that sweet Minecraft TNT, as well as the location of the plunger. We make our way towards our goal, but are stopped by a ye old lockdown that we need to lift in order to get into the bowels of the bunker. So, we make our way to the valve that lifts the lockdown, or if you're like me, you'd go and explore. Now, I played the demo, so I knew the layout of this area pretty well, so I was running around with reckless abandon, because in my head, the monster wasn't active yet. Ooh, how wrong I was. So I blew open a door that had a tripwire on it, graciously marked with an X, so I knew in future if a door had an X on it, an explosion awaited. Nice environmental storytelling there, something else frictional is known for. After the explosion went off and the tinnitus subsided, I heard skittling behind the walls. My heart sank and I darted for the nearest hiding spot. As I was hiding in the cupboard, I peered between the slats, could vaguely see an outline of something that was neither man nor beast, but something in between. Something that looked trapped in a constant state of metamorphosis. And then I opened the door to my hiding spot and unceremoniously snapped my neck. What an underwhelming introduction to the monster in this game. Sure, it was tense at first, but all tension left when it turned on wall hacks and Mortal Kombat finished me. Do you remember how they introduced the grunt in the Dark Descent? You're roaming the halls and suddenly a door blasts open by the wind, all candles going out, and the game tells you that the dark is to not be lingered in, or else your sanity will drain and you can alert nearby enemies. Your first encounter with the monster, you're trying to find a key in order to progress. You enter the area and hear an unnatural moan. Fear runs down your spine, but determination pushes you forward. After a little problem solving, you find the key, but as you make your way back towards the entrance, you round a corner and see just a glimpse of this unnatural being. The second time you see the monster is from a distance, shrouded in darkness. You find something that can cure your insanity, but then you hear some noises from behind. You quickly turn and see the thing. Your screen twisting, being distorted. The mere sight of this thing warps your eyes and mind. After a moment passes, the monster shambles away, and you creep forward, not sure if the monster's still lurking in the darkness. This interaction felt far more powerful than the one in the bunker, as it was more drawn out and happened sporadically. After you were comfortable with your environments, there was always the sense of unease, and then when the tension is palpable, the game shows you why you're afraid. Not fully, but just enough to keep you in your place. And then it lets the tension die down, lets you get more comfortable, and then it hits you again. That's why the first game succeeded, and why players love it, because it understood itself. Now, how I would have introduced the monster in the bunker. After you see Sergeant McNo-one-cares get snatched like a sugary snack at a 4-year-old's birthday, have the monster make some noise every so often. Hear scrapes and scratches behind the walls, make the player think the monster's there. You know, like in the demo. If the player makes too much noise, have the monster become more agitated and have more of an audio presence. Then, once they turn the lockdown valve for the first time, the valve breaks. Have it sound like the monster's right on top of the player. Make it sound like it's trying to crawl its way out of the wall behind them. This will then force the player on the defensive, make them run and hide, and assume that the monster's now stalking these halls. It adds tension to the future exploration as well, after the initial shock of witnessing someone get snatched dies off. Once the player has finally located the valve in the locker you need to find the combination for, another okay idea, but just kind of feels meh and not brilliantly executed. Have them attach it to the valve and lift the lockdown. But have a moment where, once the lockdown door to your right's been opened, have these slow, thudding steps that get louder as the monster gets closer. Have the monster loom in through the door, just barely visible enough to make out a vague silhouette and maybe one or two features. And instinctually, the player is going to do a 180 and run back up the hallway because the safe room's literally just down the way from the lockdown valve. You then teach the player that they are now not safe. They were before, but the monster's going to be relentless. It could appear at any time, and the only reprieve you will get is in that safe room. I felt this way it would have built up more tension in the player, but it would also let them decompress after the previous event. You'll then lull them into a false sense of security and then immediately snatch it away. And that's kind of another thing. The monster's kind of meh. I think the main selling point of it was, oh, it's really smart and it's always active and relentless and it can appear at any time. But this just diminished each encounter more and more. In the Dark Descent, you have moments of reprieve to let you calm down and bring your stress levels down. Yeah, by the end of the game you were kind of desensitized to the monster or monsters, but that was at the end of the game. In this one, you'll get all monstered out by the third or fourth encounter because they're just that frequent. And it's because the games all go all the time. The only moments of reprieve are in the safe room. But you're in and out in a matter of seconds because there's no point in staying in there. You're not going to progress anything just by sitting in a room in safety. This also seems like a good spot to talk about the generator aspect of the game. You're told very early on through notes that the fucker hates light and keep the generator fueled up at all times. There's no point in having the generator on. The monster will still crawl out of the walluses and rock your world if you're too loud, so it doesn't even deter the rats that are in the game. Oh yeah, there are big fuck off rats in the game that are only affected by the torch, so yeah. It feels they fucked up the biggest mechanic of the game, making it basically pointless. Have the lights off, the monster will attack. Have the lights on, the monster will attack. The only thing it does is just makes it a little easier to navigate. It's so sad to see a game with so much potential only for it to fall short so many times. I really wanted to like the game, and I did like it, right up until the demo portion ended. And then it just became frustrating because the monster's ever present, which kind of makes sense, but it just pushes the player so much to the point of no longer being scared and just being annoyed or angry that they either died to a one-hit kill, which makes the bandages and first aid kits basically pointless, or the fact that they have to hide under a desk for 5 minutes waiting for the monster that looks like a cross between a man, a dog, and fucking Birdo decides to take a trip back into the drywall to try and find some studs. The reason Amnesia Dark Descent works so well was because it broke up the tense and scary sections with exploration and puzzles that give you a breather. It had a story that made you want to know more. It made you want to find those morsels of information about what went on and why and who this mystery person I'm going after is. This game shows you why you have amnesia, then tells you to escape because spooky monster. Yeah, that could be chalked up to the game's length, and the lore elements later on that linked it to the previous game were interesting, but don't go charging £20 for a game that's 3 hours long when your previous game was better by comparison, longer, and only £25 on release. Come on, Frictional. I know making games is expensive, but it felt like the end of the game was gearing up for Chapter 2. But no. You've just locked me in a room with Senior Suckenfuck here, who always knows where I am and is ever chasing after me, all whilst I need to move 2 heavy, breakable boxes in order to escape. It was just such a shit ending. And yeah, there are multiple endings, and yes, I got the bad ending, but it all just felt underwhelming. After a great trailer and awesome demo, I felt I had the right amount of expectations, but at the end I just got let down really bad. Maybe if this game wasn't a part of the Amnesia brand, maybe if it was a little cheaper and a prologue to something else, like Metal Gear Solid Ground Zeroes was, I would have felt it differently. But at the end of the day, you've made a game with Amnesia in the name. It's gonna be held up to the high standards that the original set. The original that launched so many YouTube careers. All in all, it's an okay horror experience. If you really like the first game, I can't recommend it to you. But if you've never played any in the series and this is your first, I'd give it a go, but not for the price it's currently at. I mean, it's cheap for a modern game, but it can be beaten on average in 3 hours on the first playthrough, and someone beat it on their second playthrough in like 1.5 hours, so the game just, I don't know, it didn't hit the mark for me. Maybe my view is wrong and it'll be revered as the best in the series, or maybe I've just become so desensitized to horror over the years, nothing will ever scratch that itch anymore. All I can say is I hope the custom stories the fans of the franchise make will redeem the game for me, but until then... Hey, outro time. So yeah, I want to reiterate that that was my opinion and my thoughts and views on the game. Like, I sadly didn't enjoy it. It was a fun experience to start off with, but just got so boring and monotonous by the end. And yeah, my name is JeremyBot, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Toodles.